won't mind the phantom.
G'day everyone, and welcome to Expand the Phantom podcast. Our website is chroniclechamber.com, and you can subscribe to us via YouTube or Spotify or any of your other favorite podcast apps. I am Steve, and welcome today, Jermaine. How you going there, Jam?
Good, good. Always enjoy these podcasts where we get to discuss everything from around the world. There's a lot happening. It is a highlight discussing these, and I hope the fans listen to it and enjoy it as well.
Excellent. And Dan's not with us today. He's got a big family weekend on this weekend. I think it's a public holiday up there in Queensland this weekend. So a special long weekend for Dan. So enjoy that time with the family, and mate. I hope things are going well.
Does that mean that the podcast is
Going to
going
run.
to be run quicker or longer without Dan?
Well, time will tell. Time will tell. Well, these podcasts can go either way. It's the old comics and news podcast. So today we're looking at comics from released around the world in April 2025, discussing all the news and all the amazing things that happen in the world of the Phantom every month. So, as we do with these ones, we start off with the newspaper stories, don't we? All right. So we've got the Daily 268, which is the Spark, which has been happening now for a little while. So we've had a few discussions about what we think the Spark is, but
Yeah, so the last time we saw it, we saw Kit and Cartier meeting for the first time, and obviously there was a spark there. And then we shot off over to another continent in the Himalayas, and then you've got these old cronies, the old monks, and talking, and we're finding that Savannah is still in the town after killing Jumper. So yeah, it's we've kind of got this. So you've got Kaboji, Dodge, and Savannah, and so now we've kind of got that. So it's interesting. It kind of feels like we've got two different sparks. We've got the spark of the romantic interest, but we've also got the troubles with Jumper and everything else. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
so could Savannah be the spark that lights the powder keg in the mountain city? And so Calvi has gone and addressed her and said, what's going on here? And you need to leave. And Savannah goes, well, I did leave actually. As soon as I did the deed and killed Jumper, I was off. But then I realized that the safest place to be is back here in the city. Hopefully, she can be taken away or smuggled out so no further damage can happen to the city. If you're watching this on YouTube or whatever, you can see that we've got the shower scene happening here, Jam. What's happening here? What's this shower scene that you got going on?
Yeah, look, it's rather interesting. It's not the first time that a bathroom has been depicted in the Deep Woods or the Skull Cave. We've got an article about that on our website. The first time was actually in the Phantom Goes to War story. The first time that it's been heated.
Yeah, I was about to say,
So
was it heated in the Phantom Goes to War?
no, it wasn't. In all of the other previous depictions, Diana's always actually said, "Oh, this is cold, this is cold." So obviously the Phantom has finally listened to his wife and installed some heating. I'm not a geologist, I'm not an expert in this area at all, but in talking to some people, they've either Googled it or they have told me that it is very possible that you can have I don't know what the best way to describe it, but you could have a heated
A
waterfall
heated waterfall
inside.
within you.
Yeah, so it is possible.
Yep.
So yeah, look, I think it's a good inclusion. It kind of adds a little bit more to the depth of the Skull Cave. One of the good things about it, which I do like, is that you've got a very dialogue heavy part of the story. So rather than it just being talking heads, you've actually got a part of the daily thing happening, which kind of coincides with the talking heads. In one of the Sunday stories
Not,
before, the Phantom and Diana going for a stroll in the deep woods, picking flowers and stuff like that. So it's very similar concept.
just provide some action to a lot of dialogue, and it's
Yeah.
stuff that happens. Well, I know I don't have a heated waterfall in my house, but you're doing stuff while you're talking to your wife. Whether it's preparing meals or cleaning up, doing something, setting the table. You're there talking. So It's good to know that even these, then well, he's not superhuman, but he's a hero nonetheless. He still does his day-to-day type things as well. And then we get back to the mountain city and Savannah and Kalbjay. I'm going to pronounce his name about 10 different ways, I think.
And I'll pronounce it another 10 different ways.
Yeah, hearing the story and that's what we mentioned before, that yes, she left the city and then she's come back to hide at the moment, and hopefully she can be smuggled out. I'm assuming that's where she's going with that.
I
So yeah, we're
was
seeing what could be the
hmm,
spark. Yeah,
I was thinking, could in the storyline that we saw in Old Moz's tale, it was Kit became the leader or the of the mercenaries. Could Savannah become the leader of the mercenaries? So
wow,
that way
that
you've still got the storyline that's gonna happen, but instead of it being Kit, maybe. I don't know.
maybe that absolutely. And Savannah was a little bit mistaken, thinking that once Jumper was dead, that all his cronies would turn from him, because they'd been tortured by him as well. But she was a bit wrong there, and
Mm.
yeah, so yeah, she met a bit of a resistance on her escape. So there's a fair few action panels there. We got you know guns firing everywhere, and as you can see there, even the horses aren't safe. So we'll wait and see what's going on here. So moving on from the Mountain City into Wambesi land, I think we're in with the Ungraved. From memory, we had the a Wambesi family heading back to back to town, back to the home country, I guess, visiting the Rellos. Really, if I remember correctly, the daughter met up with a fella. Yeah, that's right. They had metal detectors or something, and going to see what can we find,
Yes.
what can we find, and they went searching, and they went a little bit too far from the village. Went to a part of the land that they which is taboo, and they shouldn't be going there. Staying out late at night. Final, and the tribe went looking for him. They were a bit worried, and hey, look what we found! Look what we found! Oh, you shouldn't have gone there. That type of thing. And then there's a strange light in the sky. What is this strange light? But oh, look what we found! And what they've found is like a is I'm no weaponry expert, but the amount of World War II films I've seen, is that a Luger? It looks
It
like a
looks like
Nazi
a
gun.
logo, yeah.
Yeah, a Nazi gun to me with some other Nazi paraphernalia. When this stuff is uncovered, boom, boom, boom on the jungle drums, and get the Phantom there as soon as possible. Um, and since then, the Phantom's gone to investigate, and he's been checking out this strange light in the sky, which kind of looks like a plane if you're looking closely. And then on the last panel there, yes, you can definitely see that is a World War II plane. Looks like it's been shot and is coming in to crash. Now, there's a lot of strange things that have happened in Wambesi land over the time, or over in the deep woods or in the Bengal jungle. This isn't the first time we've seen old war stuff, whether it be World War II, World War One. I'm not 100% certain on all that sort of stuff. The first one that I could think of when we were discussing before we came on was the Aeronaut, which was a DePaul and Ryan, Paul Ryan story. But you also thought of the time skip, Germ.
Yeah, which was the Graham Nolan story. So it feels like we're going to be getting that type of story. I'm not a huge fan of the fantasy element time jumping stories in my Phantom. So it's intriguing where this is going.
Yeah, he dips his toe in to these fantastical elements, and which he tends to do in the Sundays. Feels that the Sunday gives him space
Hmm.
to do that. But it's still hopefully somewhat grounded. It's not up in the stars, Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff. Or it's
Yeah.
still quite grounded in the jungle.
Yeah,
Um,
I think that's a great point that you make there, Steve, is that you can have those, but it that in for me, and this is just my opinion, there has to be that fine balance of what is real, what is not real, can they coexist? A lot like one of the stories that we're going to be discussing later on. Um, the other thing that is of interest is that obviously this is either World War One or World War Two, probably World War Two if I had to
with the
put
Nazi
my house
stuff,
on it.
yeah.
Which Phantom is going to appear? Is it going to be the 21st Phantom or is it going to be, the 18th, 19th, or 20th? Because and that's always the danger when you have a Phantom kind of like World War II onwards, and you have the same problem with Duncan Munro's stories with his story they did recently with the Vietnam stories, which we're reading at the moment as well, is that do you put the 21st Phantom in it? I'm intrigued which Phantom Tony DePaul and Jeff Weigel are going to be putting into this one.
It's an interesting one, and one that's, I don't know, I guess it's unique with the Phantom. And also with the video game, it was the 21st Phantom there, but yet it's set in, 1930s, I think, or 40s, and yet he's
Yeah.
married with and has the two kids. So, the way I see it is the Phantom is always the present Phantom. He's always a 21 unless you're told otherwise.
Well, we'll debate it more in another podcast when we actually find out, but I would hope that it's at least the 18th or the 19th.
And that's if the previous Phantom actually turns up. It could just be
Yeah.
that this whatever's going on with World War II is completely there's no Phantom there. Like it's 21 who's dealing with it. So we'll soon find out. Tony knows, of
Mm.
course. We move on now to the comic review. So of course we always start off with Australian because, well, as you can tell by our accents, we're Australian. And then we've got two Frew comics that have come out in the past month. We've got Frew 1995. It's got two stories in it. The Lights of Lake Wakama by Sylvain Runberg and with art by, Jonas Auden. It also includes another part of the Phantom in Vietnam, and so does 1996. So we'll do Phantom Vietnam as a whole rather than the two parts in one part in each story. So Lights of Wakama, covered by one of Jern's favourite artists, so West Australian Lauren Marshall. Fish of Lake Bokwama are dying, and the lead culprit is the copper mine that began operations a few months ago. Upon discovering the dead fish, the locals then see strange lights in the sky. The Phantom, upon hearing the news on the jungle drums, leaves his family rock climbing expedition and rushes to help. Are the lights some natural phenomena or something more otherworldly? Will the mine clean up their act after a word from the Phantom? And by the way, has anyone seen the boss of the mine lately?
I really enjoyed these stories. Actually, all three stories, or four, if you include Vietnam as two. I've enjoyed all the stories. Haven't enjoyed all the stories that I've read so far by Frew, but these slot have been very good. I really enjoy and we put this up on our socials as well. Really enjoyed the dialogue or the communication between the chief and the Phantom on page 7, where they're talking about, I knew I could count on you, although a mobile phone would be more efficient than those drums. The traditional method allows me to be sure who is contacting me. But it's very I really enjoyed that where, like he's kind of like saying, come on, why can't you use a mobile phone instead of having us to do the jungle drums? So yeah, there's
Good
just a
point.
few
I like it.
things.
Good fun.
Yeah, and we talked about before when we were discussing the Sunday story. This is the story where there may be a UFO, there may not be a UFO, and how is it involved and stuff like that. It delicately toes that boundary, which I like and I think is the right way of doing it.
Absolutely. So that you got a hint of the fantastical in there, but still very much grounded on the ground on the earth, really, on the ground. But yeah, a few
Mm.
little strange things can happen.
And the
Um,
artwork's
I forgot
amazing.
about the Jungle Drum mobile phone discourse. That was I liked it. That was good fun. Yeah, I was about to say the artwork. That's probably the lasting effect of this story is the artwork. Particularly, he's an angry Phantom. This isn't your happy family man Phantom. He's a in the darkness, bang, you're getting thumped and whopped and everything else. It's quite well striking in its black and white. I think it works really well in the black and white.
It does, but it also
But
looks very good in color as well. I'll show a
yeah,
couple of, if you're on YouTube, I'll show a couple of examples of it in color for those who are intrigued. So if you're listening to it audio, you might want to jump over onto YouTube as well, and you'll be able to see a couple of examples. And we have had an interview
anything
with Janice on our podcast as well. So that's, if this artwork intrigues you, always good just to be able to go jump on and listen to that as well. You made mention about the
else?
Phantom being angry. Is the Phantom too angry in this story? Is there too much aggression, or is it kind of borderline? Like, where do you see it on the Richter scale of Smiley, Cyberry to grim, dark, Raymore?
Yeah, good question. I'm not sure. But page 20 and 21 were the ones that I thought were most striking and most action-packed and, you know, the grim, determined, like that. Oh, if
Yep.
you go back one, on page 21, the panel on the top right hand corner, like, well, there's not really a panel, it's just the Phantom on a blank page. But actually, I thought that was quite striking. It didn't need anything else with it, just a blank page, the Phantom, and you do what he says. You know, it's the old Phantom's, an angry Phantom will chill tiger's blood, and you can see that. Oh, actually, yeah,
Yeah,
it was
right
just the
underneath
voice of the Phantom freezes
it.
the blood. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking about, and that's the type of mood that's coming across, and at least in this two-page spread.
Yeah, I think it maybe goes a little bit over, but I think when you're dealing with situation like this, which is, the environment, mining, people getting shot, you're helping out your friends, the jungle folk, and stuff like that. I think it's okay for the Phantom to go slightly over. I think if he goes too much over, much further, it will be too far. But I think he balances it just right in this story.
Yep.
Before we finish this off, I've talked about how I like this where you're not quite sure whether the UFO is real or whatever. Like, where are you on that scale?
Oh, there was a UFO.
So do you
No,
like that, or is it maybe a little bit too
no, I don't
fantastical
know.
for you?
I don't know. Um, I thought, oh, really? But it was done well.
Do we leave it there or do we explore it again? I personally think we leave it there and just leave it hanging in the ether.
Yeah, yeah, I wouldn't be touching on it again.
Yeah.
Happy not to see it again.
Yeah.
So through 1996, there are no aliens whatsoever in this one. Broken Tusk by David Bishop and Anthony Spay and Brian Atkins did the art on that one. The cover is by Antonio Lemos. Now, here we have the tech billionaire Ethan Mills and his party of poachers have claimed a prize elephant from the Bengalan jungle, and now the Phantom is in pursuit. But he's not the only one going after them. The elephant's mate, Broken Tusk, is after him and will stop at nothing to see his mate at peace. Will the Phantom protect the poachers at the cost of another elephant? Will Ethan Mills be able to buy himself out of this one? Or will he come up short with nothing but spare change? I really like this story. This was the two non-Vietnam stories, and maybe even no, I like the second Vietnam story. I thought this was really well done, and the not quite so subtle nods, or not nods, nudges towards certain tech billionaires in the world today, and their mindset of they can just do whatever they want because they've got the money, is there for all to see. And if you just happen to rub out that giant Merv Hughes Mo on Ethan Mills, he looks a lot like a certain Tesla driver.
I would say that this, out of the three stories, so Vietnam, the last one, and this is my favorite out of them. For me, when I read this, it's like, I'm reading a Phantom comic. You've
Yeah,
got Phantom in the jungle, very in touch with what's happening in the jungle with the animals, with the tribes people. You've got a very common problem like poaching, and even the other story was also, while it's not poaching, it's, mining and, doing
yeah.
illegal practices and stuff like that. So it's like, this is my Phantom.
But there was
But
something he
it's
didn't like though.
yeah, there was something. So I'll get to that. Let me praise it
Okay.
first, and then I'll end with where I think David Bishop has failed in this story. I like that it features hero. It's got all the elements that I like. It was just really touching. Like you feel for the animals towards the end, especially when
Yeah,
it goes
absolutely.
at the end where you know that he's going to die and he's going to die with his longtime mate. And, you don't know their official names or anything like that. It's just, yeah, it's a really nice moment.
Yeah, absolutely. You have quite a lot of empathy for the elephant.
Mm, mm. The thing I don't like, which is towards the end, where the Phantom quite easily gets his gun stolen, and then the gun, shoots the elephant, broken tusk. And I know the Phantom's injured, he's got shot in the shoulder and everything like that, but it just seemed a little bit convenient to end the story. I would have preferred if he had a secret gun or like a gun in his back or in his ankle, like like the cops do in the movies and stuff like that, rather than pulling the Phantom's gun. I just didn't like that bit, but everything else
Yep,
I did like.
fair enough. I'd probably agree with you there. I'd forgotten about that little part until you before we came on. And yeah, it's not really something that would usually happen to the Phantom. But everything else I think was fantastic.
I did
Great story.
also like how the Phantom drives the car as well. While we love Hero is the normal mode of transport and all that, but having the Phantom, in the middle of the savannah, in the middle of the jungle, driving a Corvette or whatever the type of car is, scratching the paintwork by putting the tusks on the back and all that. It was just a nice little touch.
Yeah, it was great. I said, "Oh, I need something to get from A to B. Oh, I'll use that. Thank you." Bang, off he
Yeah.
goes.
Now, Steve,
Okay. Yep.
before we go,
Hmm.
obviously, as you discussed before, the story was done by Anthony Spay and Brian Atkins. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but what I think happened was that Anthony Spay started this story, and then when he got the gig for the Phantom game, he had to get someone to fill in for him. So I
Oh,
believe that's why we've got two different artists. Now, I reckon Brian did a great job in matching Anthony Spay's style. Now, in looking at it, I think page 3, which is page 1 of the actual story, that is definitely Anthony Spay.
oh
But
yeah,
apart from that, there's majority of it. I couldn't really tell whether it was Anthony Spay or Brian, and I'm beginning to think that maybe Brian did all of the other pages, or that he might have inked it and gone from there. There's no real difference between the art styles. I think they've done quite well in matching them.
absolutely. By the way, the art, I think I really like the art. Like you look at the first, the splash title thing. That's brilliant. The amount of detail going into that jungle scene is phenomenal,
Yeah, yeah,
and in that whole page.
yeah, and
Yeah.
that's definitely Anthony Spade, but the rest of it, like, and you can kind of tell by the mask and the cow. There's a slight difference if you look through some of the other pages compared to page 1 or page 3, which in the comic, there's a little bit of difference in some of the muscle work and stuff like that. But
Mm.
I think they've done a great job. I really enjoyed this story. It was a great choice by Frew to include it.
Absolutely, it was. I couldn't agree more. Now, both of these issues have had the Vietnam stories also in. I don't want to say backup stories. I just want to say there's two stories in the comic. One that might go longer than the other, but I don't want to put down the Vietnam stories as being backup. So the two stories from Vietnam here are "If I Can Dream of a Better Land" and "Going Up the Country." Of course, these are both written and illustrated or drawn by Paul Mason. Now, If I Can Dream of a Better Land is basically a prequel, I guess. Finding out
Mm,
what brought the fan to Vietnam in the first place. Yet it's being told in the future. So the who is it, CIA agent? I think it's Leon Gross, isn't it? Who's
yeah.
doing all the work here. In the 1970s is actually going back to what's happened here in the 60s, and so time jumps that way, but we also get to see um, why the Phantom is going to Vietnam in the first place. So, Wambezi Prince finds out that his dad's Phantom finds out that Wambezi Chief isn't doing too well and needs to go get his son. And they're trying to figure out. Well, there was a line in there. Why did his son go to Vietnam? Like he was in uni and all this, various there about how he got there in the first place. Did he choose to go or was he dragged there? Either way, we don't know yet. and the Phantoms off to try and figure it out. I did like that little thing you were just there, doing the old climb up the telephone pole and tap into the phone lines that way. That's old school Phantom. I do like a bit of that.
Would
Calling,
expect that to happen in the 70s as well. That's
yeah,
how,
yeah. Well, that's when those stories were
yeah,
happening. Except you'd be calling Colonel Weeks or Warraboo, but now he's calling Uncle Dave.
yeah, yeah. No, you're right. It's the art. Look, I really enjoyed the artwork. I really enjoyed the rainy scenes of like where Uncle Dave's in New York, I think it is, with the rain, torrential rain and stuff like that. That line work is really good. Really enjoyed that. It's you may mention about the past. Well, yeah, the past being told in the future. Get your mind around that. I wonder if this story is to be collected in a trade paperback or a graphic novel, which I hope it does. Like, I really think this will be a great series to be collected. Would they publish it as
Absolutely.
this as part 10, or would they publish it in at the start so it's in not in publication order but chronological order?
No, I'd put it at page 10. Oh,
Part 10,
yeah,
yeah.
part 10. I would absolutely do that. You know, you have all this stuff, then you have, all right, the flashback, figure out what's going on. It's a great narrative device. And
Yep.
yeah, I'd appreciate it. I'd also, if they collect it all into a graphic novel or trade paperback, whatever the term is, it, you'd assume it'd be in color too, wouldn't you?
Yeah, from what I understand, and I'm like 95% sure that Paul Mason is doing this all of it in color, or he has done majority of it in
There's the color
color or
files.
something like that. Yeah. The ideal world, right? Let's just say that money's not an issue, or editorial oversight's not an issue. I would love to see it published kind of around Anzac Day or Remembrance Day
Mm.
or something like that with with a nice cover and and then I don't know, maybe something where I don't know, 10% of each sale or whatever actually goes towards, the
Yarra
veterans
Sale or
or
something. Yeah.
it'll be a good like a good thank you to those people who have served. In Australia, we've just celebrated or remembered
Remembered. Yeah.
Anzac Day. That's probably the better way of doing it. It would be nice to see Frew do something like that.
I love the titles. They're all, song titles. And this one, If I Can Dream of a Better Land. Remember, just did a bit of a look. Elvis Presley song, I think.
Okay, well, that's not
Yeah.
one
If
for
I Can
me.
Dream. Yeah.
And what about the
Might
next
be.
one, going up the country?
Rings a bell, but I cannot remember the life of me.
I really like this last page here of the letter to Diana as well.
Mm.
There's some great artwork in this issue. Of this one here, I like how you've got the letter, you've got the jungle to where Diana is reading it
Is
as
reading
well.
it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it was a great way of
Yeah.
ending
I
it.
thought it was a great touch. As the emotional depth to all of it.
Yes.
Episode number 10, Going Up the Country. I really, really enjoyed this story. I thought this was great. Well, if you follow Paul Mason on socials, you know that he's a big Popeye fan, and Popeye gets a pretty big a tip of the hat. That's what I'm to steal one from Dan. A tip of the hat to the Popeye comic and cartoons. So the Phantom has secured passage into Vietnam via the phone call that he made with Uncle Dave in the last episode. So I guess this is again a prequel. How did he actually get into Vietnam? By going on this boat run by I think what was the captain's name? Elvie, something like that. You wore
Elsie?
yeah, Elsie, that's it, Captain Elsie, and his first mate wasn't Wimpy, that was his nickname. It's J. Jimmy Washington. Now, it just so happens, if you do a little bit of research into the creator of Popeye, his name was EP something or other. The E stands for Elsie. I think there was something else there. They mentioned Wimpy. He called instead of calling him Jimmy, he calls him Wimpy, and he eats lots of yeah, light him up, Wimpy. And we do know that he likes to eat lots of sandwiches, and Wimpy in the Popeye comics loves to eat sandwiches or burgers or whatever he's eating. So there's a few bad guys or a few different elements going around, a few groups who could stop them from going through. Now the Phantom's a little bit worried about why are these guys going in there in the first place? You know, do I need to skullmark these men? Are they providing arms to people? But as it turns out, nah, they're good blokes, and you find that out towards the end. One of the things that I really liked about it, apart from the storyline, the artwork, the nods to the old Popeye comics, is it also brings in things that Tone DePaul has put into the comic, in particular John X. We see John, he gets called John X in here rather than John Doe or something like that as his
On
false,
page 29, yeah.
yeah, as his false documents or something like that. Yeah, and I thought, that's a nice little nod to the dailies. Well done.
It's these little things that show that Paul Mason is as much of a fan as a creator, and including these little elements establishes that he knows what he's doing. And for the fans that are eagerly reading it and devouring it and stuff, they're going to pick that up and they're going to get a little chuckle or a little excitement out of it. They're good, these little Easter eggs.
Yeah, and this issue's full of them. And I really like, and the story was great too. You know, they need to get into the country. How are they going to do it? Well, I take the boat. It's a nice little pleasant boat ride until it's not.
One of the things I did think was good was what they were smuggling was explained at the end, because there's that,
Yeah, yeah,
what would you call it? There's the tension build up. But I also liked how they explained who the people were that attacked them as well. So if you were not educated, which a lot of fans are not going to be educated in the war, and who on the Cambodia side is fighting, and there's room for a little bit of wokeness to come into it, where it's clearly explained, okay, these are who these guys are and these are why they are trying to attack it, and it's kind of like puts it into perspective a little bit. So I did kind of like that as well, because I think when you touch upon stories like war and stuff like that, it can allow room for wokeness to come into it.
and it should just stick to the facts. This is what happened.
Yeah.
This is what these guys did, and neither side will be all good. There'll be things that both sides did that people should be ashamed of themselves, really. With everything that's been going on, and the explanation of these guys, I think in a trade paperback or as a collection of these stories, there's a opportunity to a page essay or whatever that Paul could just spit out. These are the different things that have happened, which you see that in whatever other collected things of comics. They have things at the end like little essays, whether they be a page or two, just explaining different things that are going on.
And Jim Shepard used to do it a lot as well.
Yeah. So hopefully we can get these all collected. Now it is an interesting note. Was it written in that one, or was it on Paul Mason's newsletter that Frew had to get some KFS approval for the Popeye Easter egg, I think. So and they went in and fought hard for it, and well done to them, because it was very much appreciated.
Yeah, and I think it adds to the story. It didn't detract from the story, so I think it was good that
Didn't
KFS
detract
and
from the story
Frew.
at all, and takes nothing away from Popeye.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all the stories that have been published here in Australia. So let's go international now. As always, we are hopefully not as always. Hopefully, we can fill these roles, but we are currently looking for reviewers who can review comics from Sweden, Finland, France, Italy, and some other locations that publish the Phantom. If you'd like to join the team with regular reviews, please contact us. Now, let's switch over to Scott from the USA and Sayuz, and Christian from Germany. All right, take it away, fellas.
And today we're talking about The Phantom #0, released by Mad Cave Studios. This was written by Ray Fawkes, with art by Russell Olson, and letters by Taylor Esposito. This issue is a free comic book day release, but don't let that turn you away. It is actually a full 32-page comic, full color. It's beautifully drawn. The colors are very vivid and vibrant. It's also sort of an introduction or teaser to the Phantom character, kind of a reignition or refresh on the character to comic book fans who maybe aren't reading the newspaper strips or dailies and Sunday specials. So this issue, the story itself is kind of a self-contained introductory story. It starts off with the Phantom in his, assumedly, the Skull Cave in a giant library. There are volumes and volumes of books all around him. There's one that says 1536, which, is a very important number, speaks to the original Phantom, and here we are in 2025. There's actually no placement on what year this takes place, but one can assume it's a present day story. It's what kind of the vibe and feel is, especially with the language. But the Phantom is writing in his journal, being very detailed about today's adventure, which, feeds into the rest of the book. It's kind of a quick little romp that really just serves to highlight who the Phantom is, what he's about. This tale, it takes place in the jungle. It starts with him tracking down some poachers. He's following their tire tracks, and there's some blood marks, and he's, angry that they would disrupt and disturb his jungle to kill, beautiful animals that are just looking for peace. And so we see a lot of his environment and surroundings. For Phantom fans, this is nothing new, but for people who aren't familiar with the character, this is, a reintroduction. Definitely kind of shows you who he is, how he's different from other costumed heroes that are on the news comics or the comic book stands today. And that's kind of the big deal here is, whereas that first daily strip, where Phantom first appeared way back in 1936, that Phantom story was taking place in New York City in the harbor. This story, in the jungle really kind of creates that scene and that sense of this is who he is. He's not Batman. He's not Spider-Man. He's not, any other superhero you can think of. The outfit the Phantom was wearing, I do want to highlight, he doesn't have his striped underoos there. This is a straight solid color. Not sure what that means just yet. We don't get much information on there, but it does sync up with the outfit stylings in Mad Cave Studios' Defenders of the Earth series. This isn't to say they're the same Phantom. It's just something I noticed, that the costumes are very similar. Anyways, the Phantom is tracking these poachers. It leads them to a shack where they are inside the shack. There's a character by the name of Obi, who's kind of the hesitant, friendly, nervous poacher here. He seems to be pressed into service. He's not really part of the other guys who are more grizzled and scary looking here, but he is tasked with skinning the tiger they caught. However, there is a tiger that's on their trail and lurking behind him, and the Phantom has seen this already, and he's going to use it to his advantage. The Phantom we get here is actually kind of an interesting characterization in that there's a lot of very serious monologuing, or I guess journaling we see, where he's kind of going back and forth debating the evilness of these poachers and whether or not he should let the tiger have them or not. But there's also a little bit of humor and jokiness to his character. It creates kind of this interesting characterization where we don't know, how far on the serious spectrum he is versus this subtext of humor. Is it a little more performative, kind of in the vein of a character like Batman, or is this truly how he feels? It's an interesting, idea the writing and the creative team is presenting here, and we'll find out more as this series starts to release with issue number 1, soon after this Free Comic Book Day release. But the main point here is that, we're seeing a character who's weighing, the wickedness of other men and trying to decide in his head how he should judge them and how he should proceed. So he goes to the shack. He threatens them kind of from the roof. His big booming voice comes down. It doesn't really faze them so much. The leader of the poachers is like, that's a real man. He's on the roof. This isn't, some sort of specter or ghost. There's this little pushback. And so the Phantom gives these poachers a choice. They can drop their weapons and leave, and he will guide them to safety, or they can take their chances with the tiger. Unfortunately, the poachers choose the latter. And that's where we get a lot of the conflict this issue. The art is very cartoony, kind of light and bright. It keeps a little bit of a upbeat attitude because the tones and the theming and even the dialogue is a little darker. There's actually blood on the tiger too. So there's a darker subtext here that's kind of, uplifted with this idea of, a little more vibrant art here. Something that it's kind of interesting because it seems like it's a little more kid-friendly with the coloring and the styling, but at the same time, the tone is, more older reader, adjacent, I would say. There's something that like people who are really into like crime stories or jungle adventures, would gravitate with, regardless of how old or young they might be. The story from there kind of unfolds as you would expect. The poachers take their chances. They run outside with their weapons. The tiger leaps into action, starts picking them off one by one. And we really centralize around this character of Obi on the roof as he meets the Phantom. And that's kind of where the meat of, the themes and the ideas of this story come into play, this characterization of the Phantom. Because Phantom actually is stern with Obi at first, but he also cracks a weird joke or two. It's kind of a blink and you'll miss it kind of a thing. The Phantom says something at one point, and then he does that thing he points out, and then kind of does like a half laugh after it, and that's your cue that was a joke. But for Phantom fans, this is, it's really more about setting the scene and showing this jungle adventure. We don't get a lot of movement with an overall structure, which I guess you can't really expect because this is a number 0. This is an introductory issue. However, we do see some accoutrement of the Phantom near the end of the issue. When he finishes his journal, he goes out into what we would assume to be the inner sanctum of the Skull Cave. He sees Diana. She's there reading, I can't remember, reading or something. And he goes out to greet the day. It was a long day for him. He finished writing. He's about ready to start a new adventure. And so we have those markers of Diana's already in his life. We don't know if they're married or not. We don't know if they have kids or not. Not quite sure where this takes place. But we at least know that factor is there, that she is present. And as he goes out to greet the day, he looks up into the sky. He sees a plane smoking and on fire that's about to crash, and he is ready to leap into action once more in his Bengalan adventures. So something I should also note here too is the tiger is called a Bengalan tiger. It's not a real tiger, kind of a play off the Bengal tiger, but interesting little motif here. Wanted to point out and highlight. But other than that, it's for an introductory adventure, for what it's trying to do in terms of re-engage an audience and drive new readers to the Phantom in the United States, it's pretty solid. It has the action beats. It has some beautiful art. There's enough there for older readers to see that it's a book that will be taken serious. Phantom does have a serious tone, when he's talking to the poachers. And hopefully this is the start of something that they'll build upon greatly. The only real issue that I see right now, and maybe that's because I'm a little bit too eager, is that since this is issue number 0, we don't really know where in the timeline this Phantom takes place, what canon he's part of. Is he his own canon? Is he connected to the Defender somehow? None of that is known. And so it's a little bit of a major question mark that gives me pause. But other than that, looking forward to where this goes, because we have the foundation there. All they need to do is build this up and start, telling us a gripping adventure that, keeps drawing us in.
So have you read number 0 for?
Yeah.
So we'll just have spend 5 minutes discussing it.
I thought there was a lot to like in the story. You got poachers, we've got deep in the jungle, we've got Phantom not being seen but scaring the bejeebers out of the poachers. But there is one thing that I really, really didn't like about it, and I'll get to that later. Well, first we'll hear Jam's thoughts. I thought the artwork was great. I've heard people talk about the cover, and these are non-Phantom people and they kind of like the cover. I thought, seeing it in the flesh, I think the cover works okay, but it's still slightly off for me. I'm not quite sure what it is, but I think the artwork inside the story is good. It's very, very good. Full color, of course.
So are you happy with it overall?
But overall, I am reasonably happy with it.
For me, overall, I'm happy with it. I'm fine with it. I wasn't expecting a full 22-page story for a free comic that they're giving away. I think that was a great way of doing it. The artwork, I think, works well. It's a little bit different.
Yep.
If you are along the lines of more old school, where it's Cyberry or nothing, you might not enjoy this.
Yeah.
You're not going
It's
to
very
enjoy
modern.
this
The
art.
artwork's very modern. It's Defenders of the Earth costume. He doesn't have his stripes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that's probably my biggest bugbear, but that's not really a big issue for me. Overall, in Australia we have a saying called "Does it pass the pub test?" And I think overall it passes the pub test. It
Yeah.
it acts like the Phantom, it looks like the Phantom. I can't tell if it smells like the Phantom, but I'm sure it does smell like the Phantom. Overall, in reading the comic, it's like, yes, this is the Phantom. This is the Phantom that I grew up on. This is the Phantom that I like to read now. It is something that I would expect in a Frew comic, in an Egmont Phantom Man comic, and it was something I might even expect in a newspaper story as well. So overall, that's fine. It shows the law. It shows enough of the lore and the elements of what you expect the Phantom for like new readers. So it behaves like the Phantom, so that way, if you're a new reader, you can read this, and then you can read an old Lee Falk classic story, and there's going to be similarities there. It's not going to be jarred and go, oh, this isn't what I read in Mad Cave Studios. Overall, I'm happy with it, and I think it's a good representation, and it's a good free representation of what the Phantom could be.
I agree with most of what you've said there. There's only one thing, and it's in regards to acting like the Phantom, and this is one I've got the little issue with. Now, everything else I think is great. Like I said, it's a free 22-page story. Get out and and grab it. As I mentioned before, the Phantom's hiding, or not hiding, but he's unseen for a bit of it and scares the bejeebers out of the bad guys. Got the skull marks and that sort of stuff. But the one thing that I'll have a slight issue with it is that he doesn't do all he can to rescue the humans, the bad guys. He allows things happen for them to choose their own fate, I guess. Number one goal here in this story is, right, we got to protect this tiger. All right, the tiger that's stalking the bad guys. But we need to make sure that if these guys are good people, then I'll step in and make sure the tiger doesn't kill and maim them. Now, how does he do that? He says, well, give you a chance. Now, that one fella has actually come up to the roof with Phantom, and they're talking and helps that fella to escape. The other guys, well, you don't have to outrun the tiger, you just have to outrun the guy sitting, running beside you. And one fella makes it to the big machine gun thing, and right, I'm going to get you, tiger. And unfortunately, the thing doesn't fire. It's a main plot point here, but I think the way it doesn't fire is quite anti-phantomy, if that's a word. Yes, he allows the person to make his choice. He could have been rescued. He went down this path, but if he went down that path, the Phantom made sure that he was going to die. That was something that didn't sit incredibly well with me.
It's a good point that you make, Steve. I was talking to Suaz as well, who did our reviews of Regal 39, and he raised exactly the same point. However, what I find interesting is 10, 15, 20 minutes ago on the podcast, we just reviewed The Broken Tusk. Now, in The Broken Tusk, there was two people, two poachers that died by the animal as well. There was a guy that got flung by the trunk, and then there's a guy that got stomped to death. Now, that wasn't raised in that story. You didn't raise about the
No,
Phantom not stopping those people getting killed. Where in this
but he
one,
also didn't take like bullets out of the gun, or he didn't take a firing pin or anything else out of them so it could happen.
I
Yeah,
would
yeah.
argue that the Phantom behaved very similar in that Phantom End story as he did in the Mad Cave story. Now, I'll be interested to hear what other people think once they've read it and stuff like that. So please let us know in the comments, whether you're on social media or on YouTube or whatever. Was it a problem for you? Was it not? I think you raise a very good point there, Steve. But for me,
You're cool with it.
well, I'm not cool with it because, it's someone's life. Now, at the end of
Yeah.
the day, if it comes
Uh-huh.
to an animal or a person, I think you go with the person. The Phantom gave them the option. And at the end of the day, there is this thing called free will.
Yes. So I'm going to reread both stories back to back now. No devil, no devil, no hero in this story.
Yeah, that's another thing that some fans have pointed out as well. And then on the last page, you have that beautiful one-page story of the Phantom rollicking through the jungle with no hero or devil. So I wonder if there's a reason for that or whether it is an oversight. I would like to think, and I'm hoping and I remain optimistic. I will be optimistic until I have a reason to be pessimistic, and that is that there's a reason why hero and devil are not shown. But we'll see. Maybe it's part of the story why there is no hero or devil in that part of the
Oh,
overarching
okay.
story,
Maybe,
which we're going to see
yeah,
in part one
maybe,
or issue one, two, three, or whatever. So
yeah, maybe he gets them throughout the story. Yep, fair enough. He's already with Diana though, so
yeah, in the podcast with Ray Fawkes, which we've talked about, and Swaz dissected that podcast. There's a YouTube link on our platform, which you can go watch yourself, or you can just be lazy and read the article. They do mention hero.
okay.
So
Have to
I
go check it
I
out.
think, yeah, I think with that, I think that it's not an oversight and poor research. I think there's a reason why Hero and Devil was not included.
We'll see what happens in issue number 1 or 2 or 3. That'll be good.
Defenders of the Earth issue 6 gets us back to the action of what's kind of happening in the latter half of this arc. Everything's kind of coming full circle and coming to a head after the first 5 issues here. This is the one issue that doesn't have series artist Jim Calafiore on art in his place. Dan DiDio is still writer. We have Matt Horak with Brent Schoonover doing art for a part of the book, and then Sal Velluto doing art for the other part of the book. Carlos M. Manguel still does letters, and we still have colors by Wancho. So everything else around this feels the same, but the art does look different in this brief interludes chapter for Defenders of the Earth. So it kind of starts off here. This is actually super important, these first few pages here. The art definitely shows a different style than Jim Calafiore. We are seeing the Matt Horak with Brent Schoonover art here in the beginning and peppered in the middle. We get a little brief play-by-play of what's going on. At the end of last issues, we saw that Lothar reconnected with his ex-wife Shakara in the Seven Nations. She's running it now, and she's actually working with Princess Castra. And so there's this connection with Crotan. That was the big cliffhanger of the last issue. So here we get a play-by-play that, like, Flash is talking with Castra now, but that's really not panning out, trying to use Flash. He's kind of outlived his usefulness. Phantom is with Jeddah in the hospital after the big battle last issue between Phantom and his brother Kurt Walker, who was wearing the mantle of the Phantom at the time. Really explosive issue there, when it was revealed that Kurt Walker, of course, was given the go-ahead to be the Phantom and was working with Crotan. So here we have this conversation, kind of outlining what has happened. Basically, that Crotan using his Baron Atomics powerhouse to rebuild Earth is kind of consolidated. It has an army, and they're ready to go ahead and conquer, Octon being the big brain of the operation here. But something that should be highlighted, if you checked out our review for Flash Gordon Quarterly number 2, there was a mini story in there about Octon, and actually in tandem with the release of this issue, there is a Flash Gordon Quarterly number 3 that also goes into further backstory for Octon for the Defenders of the Earth series. And that one is even more important than the Quarterly 2 issue because of who is behind Octon. It's actually confirming a lot of theories I've had and that everybody on the X-Band podcast has talked about in our mid-series review of this series. So something worth checking out. But as we head into this issue, we see there's a little bit of a battle, going on here in terms of this argument between Octon and Crotan. So, Octon's kind of questioning Crotan's, genius here. And again, Flash Gordon Quarterly number 3 really outlines why. Crotan questions and basically says, hey, I thought we had your mind wiped and the other personality inside you wiped clean. And Octon tries to backpedal and say, I misspoke. And then we have a view of Garrix comes in and says, hey, Mongo is in tatters. All these different races on Mongo are at war with each other. Crotan is pleased with it. He doesn't want them to wipe each other out because his ultimate goal, it's kind of implied here, is he's going to conquer Earth. That's pretty explicit. But he's going to use Earth and his armies he's creating on Earth as a base of operations to reclaim Mongo, which is the homeworld for Ming the Merciless, Crotan, and Princess Castra. So while that's going on, we have human workers who are sneaking away and they are starting a rebellion. So we're getting some action carrying through here. Meanwhile, at the Seven Nations, we go back to Lothar and Shakara, and they're kind of arguing. Lothar's upset that Shakara and the Seven Nations seem to be in league with Crotan. And so there's this bicker back and forth on how Lothar left and Shakara had to do what she had, essentially. But she reveals that working with Princess Castra has bought her some time because she can see, Princess Castra's guards are here, but outside their walls, there's this huge army that's amassing. So Castra has, delayed the Crotan army from seizing the Seven Nations here. So more back and forth. We see, Crotan still analyzing things from afar. We see Flash and Castra having their reconnection. If you remember from the earlier part of this series, there was this will they, won't they kind of a romantic undercurrent going on between them. That has since dissipated, I think, since issue 4, I want to say. Kind of went real cold around issue 3 or issue 4. But we have this, Castra's trying to beg Flash to come with her, and Flash is like, no, I gotta save Earth. These are my peoples. And, they have their little back and forth, their little, tease of romance here, and it ends in Castra knocking Flash Gordon out and giving him a kiss on the cheek here while he's incapacitated. Kind of funny. I find that one a little bit of amusing. But this leads to the big explosion and action-packed aspect of this series. So if you've been looking for the action in this series, the first few issues, it was kind of absent as a lot of pieces were moved into play. Here, there was a lot of explosions and warfare, and, basically Dan DiDio and the creative team have been setting up their action figures, and now it's time to mash them together. So, we see that going on here, this big explosion, the rebellion inside Crotan's base. And this is kind of one of the highlights of this issue here is this war. It's kind of fun to see, the art team play around with it, play with, Garax's weird-looking troops, and, these little laser blasts back and forth. It does feel like the cartoon. It almost, you can almost hear the sound effects in your head. While they're trying to quell the rebellion, Crotan gets shot, and Garax is kind of impenetrable, so he's fine, but we have this little bit of warfare here before we cut to kind of it's jarring at first, but this is probably a highlight of the issue for me, is Mandrake the Magician is visiting a hospital in the Seven Nations. It's a children's hospital, and he's handing out action figures of himself. And I think what I like about this, in this series so far, Mandrake has been very calm and kind of like the level-headed, easygoing member of Defenders of the Earth. He's pretty cool, and just he kind of magic aways every kind of problem they have. But here, he reconnects with Kashin, who was working for Crotan and now is swaying and like, well, I didn't sign up for this. I was trying to learn and grow, and it seems like Crotan's against Earth, which kind of no duh. But Kashin was like, I was afraid to talk to you because I thought you'd be mad at me. And Mandrake's like, why would you think I'd be mad at you? He's like, you had to seek out your mentors and grow, and that's what you had to do. No hard feelings. But it's just, I think I like this because amid all of the maelstrom of action and explosions, you have Mandrake being calm and being, one of those, kind of like one of those everyday heroes we talk about. Like, these guys are heroes. They're saving the world. Their whole thing is Defenders of the Earth. But here's him, just trying to bring joy to children amidst all this catastrophic destruction, and everything going on. And if you look at this in like a socio-political level, I guess you can argue that, it's kind of like the reason why I hesitated at this is because, especially in the United States, there's a lot going on. Every day the news is kind of scary, and whether you're looking at global news or you're looking at domestic news with what's going on in the country, it's kind of scary and terrifying, and, a lot happening very quickly. But there are still the helpers in society, and that's kind of why this stood out to me, is this is like a helper in society helping in a small way that could have a very impactful, meaningful engagement with these children that can encourage them to grow up to walk in Mandrake's leads. That's kind of our footsteps. That's how I take this. So, also in the hospital here, we have Jetta, who's recovering. She wants to get back in action, and Phantom's like, no, doctor said you got to recover. So they're, chatting it over. LJ is here. He's also injured. He took a bullet. So he's recovering. He's fighting with Rick Gordon because, hey, all this stuff was set off by, Flash working with Crotan initially, but Phantom intervenes and says, Crotan wants us all to fight. And the minute we do that, then we break down and Earth is really doomed. And so this is really the only glimpse of the Phantom we get in this issue, unfortunately. However, it's an important one. Phantom here is kind of the thread for the team, keeping everybody together. He gives Jedi Kiss. We see a little Zuffy action. And this is also going back to kind of the core theme of this arc so far, which is the Defenders were separated in the first issue. Now they're coming together, and it's this union to join together to fight a greater evil. That's the main thread. That's kind of the goal of the storyline, it seems, for this 8-issue limited series. When everybody leaves, and Jetta's ready to go to sleep, they turn the lights off and she sees her grandfather. And so this is a callback to the Council of the Phantoms we saw in an earlier issue. And, her grandfather basically says, you have earned your place. When the time comes, you know what to do. Very important moment. Could mean a lot of things. My feeling is that maybe we'll see, because our main Phantom right now is technically a ghost that's still around thanks to some kind of magicking of Mandrake. Maybe Jetta will become the Phantom by the end of the series. That's just a wild guess, but I feel like there's a little bit of, it could lean that way. But that speaks to really what the issue with this storyline is there are a lot of moving pieces and there are a lot of things that aren't connected well. So like last issue we talked about Kurt Walker and bringing him in. Crotan's ties to him are very thin, and that's a problem still here. We have all these ties to things. There's 7 nations connected to Crotan. We learned that Shakara did that because she's kind of delaying the army, but these things aren't threaded in a way that sells it. They're thrown in there. They are connected, but it's not. We need more, I think, is what the problem is here. And so, we have that in this storyline too, is, we're finally getting a callback to the Council of the Phantoms here, but we need a little more to sell this connection there, why we saw them and now we're seeing a member of that council again. It's not fluid enough to seal the deal in the story. There's a lot of gaps that readers really need to fill in to make the story, flow nicely. And that's a complaint I think I've mentioned in a few reviews, is that there's a lot of things thrown at the wall in this series. Some work, some don't. When it comes back to art, Carlos M. Manguel continues on his work. I actually really like his work on letters here for the Council of the Phantoms. I think that's a really cool effect to kind of make it ghostly, and we have the purple and there's emphasis on it, so you can kind of hear it in like a stern, grandfatherly Phantom voice. Colors are still fantastic, very bright, very much like the cartoons. The art, there is a difference between the two art teams, very clear difference. I really like the Sal Voluto art. It really feels like the cartoon to me, even maybe more so than Jim Calafiore. But, Jim Calafiore is a great artist in his own right as well. So we get to the end here. Crotan is kind of monologuing. This is probably my favorite page in the book. We have Crotan kind of doing his monologue to the backdrop of things he's highlighting. How Earth was in shambles when Ming invaded. He fixed it up by bringing Baron Atomics to the world, and now he's going to conquer it, And he's saying all this while he's torturing the leader of the rebellion. And so they're going to turn the leader of rebellion into a soldier. We know that. That's what they've explained in previous issues. They're taking humans and turning them into ice soldiers. Octon is given orders to prepare to assault the 7 nations, and that is where we leave. We have this nice shot of Garrix's army, the triangle-headed. They all kind of look like Nimrod from X-Men, if you're familiar with that. But we have this army invading, good to go, and tease for next issue where we're going to have this, assumedly there's a battle between 7 nations and Crotan's army. So that's the issue. Leave us a comment below. Let us know what you think. And, we will talk over Defenders of the Earth next month as we wrap up this series and come to a close for the 8-issue limited run that this was originally planned for.
Hello, for this review we are looking at The Phantom number 39 from Weigel Publishers. This issue features the daily story, The Gladiator, which is the 107th daily story from Lee Falk and Cy Barry, which was in the newspapers in 1969. This story is printed here by Weigel. The cover is based off the story and is done by Ankit Mitra, and it is a quite striking cover, and it does attract you to the action in the book quite easily. The background and the colors, I think, is very nice. We also get this card, as you can see here, as a freebie with this book. Looking inside the book, we have the story and this information with the content advisory from Kingfishers. We also have the story here, starts from here, and the colors in the story are done by Abhishek Vishwas, who you may recognize from his work at Shakti Comics. He did a few covers and color work for Shakti, and this is his first time working with Weigel, their rival company, and so it is very interesting to see the creatives from Shakti actually working here at Weigel, other than Ankit Mitra, who works for both companies. The story, the color work, as you can see here, looks quite nice. However, I cannot stop pointing out the sort of use of those shades and sort of shadows that Abhishek Vishwas has put in. However, this looks quite nice, obviously, and I don't really have any problems with it, but I cannot nitpick that the feeling that Cy Barry's stories actually work best with flat colors instead of this kind of sort of dynamic sort of colors. However, as a casual reader, somebody will not find any problem with these colorings, unlike Shakti's works where the overuse of color is very much prominent. But this is very nice, and as you can see, it looks quite pleasing to the eye and is printed very nicely on this glossy paper by Weigel in this great format. So I don't really have any problem with this, but this credit of colors by Abhishek Vishwas on every page should not be here. I don't think that is very much required, but that's what Weigel is doing, so that's it. However, we do see the colors really pop on this paper, so that is nice. The story, being a sort of supernatural occurrence in the Phantom's world, ends in a sort of dream, but we are also left in a vague understanding of what actually happened. That is what I actually really like about stories from the era of Lee Falk, and where these kind of things occur. The most of the stories feature the Phantom either dreaming or somebody's telling the story of the Phantom's feats. So that is nice. The story ends here. Now also the ads for the previous issues, and we have this ad which Weigel has been doing on the back page for a long time. One thing to be noted here is that The Gladiator, being from 1969, is the oldest daily story that Weigel has ever published, and that is very nice, and we hope to see more old stories being produced here in India, especially the stories of Wilson McCoy with obviously new color works. Also, we have to point out one fact that this no publication from Regal. The last issue, number 38, which is here, came out on October of last year, and after that, I don't know how many months, but at least 4 or 5 months, this issue has come out. So that is like a very long interval for Regal, and I hope they are able to actually provide more issues with lesser intervals like before, because last year we only had like 4 issues. Now this year now we are having this one issue. I hope Regal does not actually wait for too long and starts providing issues at a very timely manner. I hope so. So that is what I would like to point out from this issue. I hope you enjoyed the review. Thank you very much and happy phantoming.
Welcome to Chronicle Chamber. My name is Chris. Today I review the Phantom Spezial from Zauberstern number 2. It costs €8. It has 63 pages. It's the April 2025 edition with Die Kriegshetzer, Die Aktentasche und die Insel der Schlangengöttin Teil 1. It's the War Mongers, the Briefcase and the Snake Goddess Island from Graham Nolan and Claes Rimerti. And first of all, I show you the art, and the paper is awesome quality, like always from Zauberstern. The colors are beautiful and it's very sharp printed, and we have reprints in Australia, Brazil, Finland, India, Norway, Sweden, Turkey and United States for all 3 comics. And it's a cool story. It's the first one, the War Mongers, and in this magazine I like all 3 stories. The Phantom Spezial number 3 comes out in May this year. Little advertising. And we have the next, Die Aktentasche, the Briefcase. Again, Nolan and Rimerti. And also beautiful art. I hope you can see it. I like Nolan's art very, very much. And also a very cool comic story. And nice story. And we have the last comic, the Snake Goddess Island part 1. The second part comes out in Phantom Spezial number 3. Like I said before, we have reprinted in Australia, Brazil, Finland, India, Norway, Sweden, Turkey and United States. And some information, and they want some feedback. If you can read it, you can write an email, and some advertising from Zauberstern. The back cover, also very cool, all in one. It's a very nice magazine for €8, and for the look and feel of the old ones, it's an old Bastille magazine with 26 or 32 pages, sorry, and you see it's a little bit bigger from the Zauberstern comic, and it's a old magazine from Bastille. Just a quick look from the old days, and we are done with this review. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, fellas, for doing that. Now, just a reminder, like I said before they did their reviews, if you're from a country that we haven't reviewed your comics from, please get in contact with us and give you some airtime, and you can tell us all about the comics, the Phantom comics, sorry, that are happening in your part of the world. Segue from anyone who has picked up Free Comic Book Day Phantom, you'll notice that on the last page, third last page, just after the story finished, there we go. We have an ad for the in 2040 darkest hour, a new reborn. Discover Phantom 2040, a new shadow, only on Comics Kingdom. Now available. So Comics Kingdom are going to be doing a webtoon, a webcomic of Phantom 2040, and quite futuristic, of course, as judging by the name and judging by the artwork here. And when I see all the floating cars, makes me think of the was it the Fifth Element? Fifth Element.
Fifth Element, Back to the Future,
all those sort of things.
Yeah, but
And
2040
of
is
course,
only 15 years away.
yeah, it's not that far, isn't it? We forget about that. And of course, 2040 was a comic and cartoon series back in the 90s, which was quite critically acclaimed at the time.
Yes.
Had the Aeon Flux artist, if I remember correctly,
Creators,
who did,
yes.
yeah, who were at the helm there.
I am
Yeah.
very excited about this. Before I talk about the ideas of the webcomic, if you are a fan of this TV show, one thing I would love to see on the Chronicle Chamber platform is a episode by episode fan commentary. So if that's something that a fan out there wants to do and has time to do that, please contact us because I would love to be able to see something like that. And at the same time, I would like to see a Defenders of the Earth fan commentary as well. We did talk about the TV series back in episode 6. Now, that's 300 official episodes ago, but it was kind of like it was an overarching type of thing. We also had an interview with the art director of the TV show, did join us for a podcast about 150 episodes ago. So, again, if you do like the TV show, go watch it. You can watch them on the the Comics Kingdom YouTube channel. Go watch our podcast, which is with him. And then by the time you've gone through all of that, you should be able to see the webcomic, which will be coming out in summer of this year. So that will probably be around June, July.
That's Northern Hemisphere summer.
Northern Hemisphere summer, yes. But most people in the Northern Hemisphere don't actually realize that there is actually a Southern Hemisphere in the world. So
I'll go back to our first point here, which is more about our own stuff rather than anybody else. But the Phantom Census, weekly prizes have been given away. Dean's been on top of that, spinning the wheel every week and giving away prizes. Tell us what you think about the Phantom and where you'd like to see it go. Now, we're not the only ones doing a census. It looks like Comics Kingdom, good old KFS, they're doing a website survey themselves. So this is just on their own Comics Kingdom website as opposed to anything else. Have you done the census, Germ?
Yes, I've done the survey for Comics Kingdom. Some of the issues that I raised is I don't like the Mandrake image banner when you click on the Phantom. It's the Phantom, not Mandrake. I don't like how if you want to access the archive stories, you got to do it via the date. I think it would be better if you actually accessed it via the Phantom story, because if I want to reread Daily Story, The Professor, which is, 46 or Daily Story 46, I'm going to have to go onto Phantom Wiki, find out that first date of it appeared, and then go into the system and look for that date rather than just going through it and seeing the list of the titles, or maybe even ordering it by the artist. And we're going, I want to read a Wilson McCoy story. Wilson McCoy, oh, here's his stories, and then read the story. I think it would just be a lot easier to be able to access those stories if it was organized a little bit better. I think some of the navigation's also a little bit I don't know, a little bit confusing, a little bit convoluted. So I think it's great that Comics Kingdom is allowing and asking for our feedback. The same as with the census. We're very easy to say, oh, I don't like this, and being grumpy old farts. But you have now got an opportunity to actually tell these people that are custodians of the character, custodians of the website, actually what you think. So, if you want to complain about it, this is your opportunity to complain about it. This is your opportunity to have your voice to be heard.
Yeah, if there's things you like, you can also say that too.
Yes, exactly.
So there's surveys, there's censuses. Go in there and make your voice heard. So please note that the Phantom census is about the Phantom. The Comics Kingdom website is about the Comics Kingdom website one, not just
Yes.
necessarily the Phantom. We've got some details on the Defenders of the Earth series, the comic series that is. So issue number 6, temporary artist announced. Scott did a review of that, didn't he?
Yep, that's included in this podcast. You would have, if you listened from the start to the end and haven't bounced around, you would have listened to that maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes ago.
Fantastic. I just picked up my copy yesterday. I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
It was great to see Sal Velluto back as one of the artists. Obviously, if you've read a lot of Frew comics or Phantom Men comics, you would know who Sal Velluto is. He also did the Herms Press issue as well. Then there is another artist called Brent Juvenova. That's
if you use the SCHO like in school.
He started drawing some of it as well. And then the other one, I think Matt? All right. If you look at the comic, you'll show who did what. Look,
it actually says what pages they did.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of doing it. I think the art styles are actually kind of almost work. They're not as close together as the one in the Frew comic, which we talked about, 45 minutes ago in this podcast. But I think they worked quite well. And what I've liked about it is there's two main settings in this story. There's the jungle settings and then there's the ice station hideout settings. And so both artists kind of have each settings as what they're drawing. And it works well. They've split it up quite well like that. So I think they've done quite well. I would like to see some of these artists be given more of a go. Whether, there needs to be fill-in issues or whatever in their regular Phantom series. So I think it was a wise decision to use someone like Sal, who is known and loved by a lot of Phantom fans.
Okay, moving on over to Island Lightning Strike and Task Art New Magazine.
I'm not exactly 100% sure whether I've kind of got it right, but the best way to describe it is it's a short magazine. It's not just like a comic. It's kind of like it features information about the Phantom. It's a great comical magazine for new readers. So if you're a new Phantom reader, this will be the type of magazine that you would want to pick up. It's a great concept. You can tell knows what he's doing in the sense of trying to create a market for the Phantom in a new market. So he's like in this magazine, in the first magazine, there's information about the Phantom's world. So the country Bengala, Kit and Heloise, some of the main characters, and then they use the first 2 weeks of the Spark story, which is the retelling of the origin story. So it's kind of like if you've got a fan who's a new fan, so say whether it's let's just say, your son, right? He goes, "Oh, Dad, I wouldn't mind reading some more of the Phantom." This is the type of magazine you would give him. You would give him this magazine along with a pile of your free comics, because then he can read his free comics or his Phantom Men comics or whatever, and then you give him this magazine, and it's for those who come in late. So I do like that. I've been told that Frew are ordering a whole heap of these in. So if you are in Australia, you don't have to get it through Lightning Strikes. You can get it through Frew.
That'd be very, very, very handy. I think I saw it on social, Lightning Strike Social. This really does look like a quality publication. So I am keen to see what's going on with that one. Other publications going on overseas, we've got the Phantom Men hardcover 2025 theme has been announced. Now, in the past, they've done themes such as, and I was just looking at this a moment ago, the Heart of Darkness they've done Kate Somerset, the Phantom Gladiator, Crusader Egyptian, those sort of things. But this time we've got, I think, is it Rhodia this year, Jim?
I thought it was Rhodia as well, but no, it's more, Rhodia will be featured heavily. So for those who have followed our podcast for quite a while, you remember some of our podcast chats with Robert Aman as he talks about the trend of the Phantom Men stories back in the 70s, which featured Rhodia apart, as a mirror of what was happening in South Africa with apartheid, and kind of like the left-leaning element of the Phantom and the Phantom stories. So all those stories that Robert Oman talks about in his two books, he's got two books where he touches upon this, will be the stories that will be published in this theme. Now, it's an interesting
Okay.
concept. I think it works well in the sense that Phantom Men are celebrating their 75th anniversary. And so these stories is what made Phantom Men popular in the 70s. So it's kind of like the theme celebrates what made them popular by having all of these stories.
Yeah,
I
good
pref
idea.
Yeah, it is a good idea. It's clever. I prefer a theme like the Kate Somerset stories, or maybe the Labunga stories, or Sandal Singh stories, or like a collection of stories like that. But I think this is a good idea, and I'm intrigued to see how it does turn out. The potential problem is that a lot of the stories had average artwork, which might
Okay.
be a bit of a deterrent, and a lot of them are in black and white. So that might be kind of like, I think the hardcore fans will buy it, but the casual fans would buy the Heart of Darkness and the Gladiator stories and the Kate Somerset, but the casual fans, I'm not sure if they'll pick this up. So it will be interesting to see how sales go.
All right. You picking it up yourself?
Yes, I'll be picking it up.
Yeah. You got your order in. Now, talking about pre-orders, we can also pre-order the Mythos Omnibus. Now, looking at this, they've got a collection of stories from the mid-90s, about 6 stories, I think, with George Olsen and Keith Williams at the helm there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about this one?
An interesting choice for stories. They've started
Mm-hmm.
reproducing Wilson McCoy, Ray Moore, and Cy Barry stories. I would have probably preferred if they actually just stuck with those ones. I think those stories would be better received. However, from what I understand, is these stories by Joel Jolson and Keith Williams, a lot of these stories have never been published in Brazil or before. So maybe that's why they're going with it.
Are you picking that one up yourself?
I think so. I think I've got there's a Celso Nuons I buy him free comics, send him over, and then he sends me over stuff. So I think that will be one of the ones that I've got majority of the others, and they're good publications. They're nice and thick. The print quality is quite good. I've got a review of a couple of them up on our platform as well. So if you're umming and ahhing, if you're a completist and you're umming and ahhing, go have a look at our review where we have reviewed some of the other omnibuses, and it might help you make a decision. We are now looking at the details for the 2024 Best Phantom Men Stories as voted by the fans.
So The Man Who Could Not Die came in at number 3. That was written by Iri Carelli with art by George Best. Number 2 was Curse of the Granite God Part 1, written by Scott Goodall with art by Carrie Lepinen. And coming in at number 1 was The Sing Raiders, written by Andreas Eriksson with art by Ivan Rodriguez. And you can see on our website there'll be a complete list of the 36 stories if you'd like to see them. There's lots of notes about it on our website if you want to check out Chronicle Chamber.
It's interesting that the number of new created stories didn't poll that well in this. I think there's only 2 new stories that actually polled in the top 10, and one was the Peter Anderson story, and one was the one that won, which technically is not a new story. It was a new story for Phantom Men readers, but that was published in Frew a year or 2 before. So it's interesting, like the pessimist would say, oh, the news stories are crap and they're no good. But then I think if you actually look at it and you look at the older stories that was published in 2024, they were all very, very popular story. Like The Curse of the Granite God It was a part one, part
The
two
band.
story
Yeah.
published in the mid 90s for Frew. That's always done very well. The Man Who Cannot Die, Hero's Death Sentence, some of these stories that were published by Phantom Men last year, they are very, very good stories. So it requires a little bit more of a deeper analysis to be able to kind of get your head around some of the voting.
It's like Phantom Men actually know their audience and reproducing these classic stories, which they know are going to sell really well and going to be popular with the audience, rather than just throwing in an old story. I don't want to say old Lee Fox story because they're great as well, but just an old story willy nilly without much thought about it. Oh, it's been
Yeah,
20 years since we've heard this one, so let's put it in. No, there was some thought
yeah.
going into it.
Yeah. That's a very good point, Steve. And what's interesting is they only produced one Cy Barry story, published one Cy Barry story last year as well,
Oh, okay.
which is
Rightio.
similar as what Frew's doing the last couple of
Yep.
years as well.
Just turning the dial down a bit and bringing up the new guys.
Hmm.
So King Feature Syndicate, they're attending the 2025 Licensing Expo in Las Vegas. What is the 2025 Licensing Expo? Is that where everyone gets to show off their IPs and people get to see, oh, I can do something with this, I can do something with that. I can make another
Pretty
poker machine out
much.
of the Phantom. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
No
pretty
more
much.
poker
So,
machines.
like, for instance, Marvel go there, Disney goes there, Nickelodeon goes there. It's where all the big wigs, all the big licenses go. And KFS went last year. They showed off their digital trend guide, which I still haven't seen, and I would actually like to
Yep,
see what a trend guide is. They're going to be showcasing the Phantom, Flash, Popeye, and a couple of other characters. So I think it's good that KFS attends these type of events and that they are using the Phantom as one of their main characters that they want to showcase.
absolutely. Get the Phantom out there. Again, on quality products. I think that's a good idea. What have we got here? Sweden Nodsken Culture Festival Phantom theme. Oh, I haven't heard about this one. This one's new to me. Guests include Kazia Nair, Henrik Johnson, and Sylvain Ronberg. So what is the Sweden Nodsken Culture Festival? And we can't get a ticket.
Well, first of all, you need to take your wife over to Sweden. Um, that might be a good 40th birthday present, though, Steve. Your wife's got a
uh,
40th coming up in about a month.
yeah, a couple of
Um,
months. Yep.
so one of the creators, Sylvain Runberg, which is one of the guys that I think we just read his story. We just reviewed his story, which was The Lights of Lake.
Oh, that's him. How
Yep,
soon
that's
we
him.
forget.
So you've got that. Henrik Johnson's created a couple of stories, or drawn a couple of stories, a couple of Phantom covers, and Cassie and
Done some
I
artwork, yeah.
has just done two Phantom Men stories, one this year and one last year as well. We've got an interview with Casa on our website as well. I'm not sure if it's a comic convention or whether it's a festival and it's like got a comic theme which includes the Phantom. So they've got
Cool.
which you'll see if you're on YouTube, they've got a poster which has got a cosplay of someone dressing up as the Phantom, and they've got three creators who will be attending it as well. So, it'll be great to go to something like that, get a couple of posters, prints, some signatures and stuff like that, maybe even some original artwork. I know Kasai features or has for sale some of her original artwork from her two stories as well. So contact her beforehand. You can probably pick up some original artwork as well.
Very good. Go there and check it out. But if you're stuck here over in Australia, we've got our Comic Con still going throughout the year. We've had a number already, but coming up, we've got the Adelaide Oz Comic Con on May 31st and June 1st. Then we've got Melbourne Oz Comic Con on June 7th to 8th, which I hopefully will be getting to myself. Sydney Supernova is June 21st, 22nd. Now, we've just heard that is the Phantom himself from the movie. Billy Zane will be at Sydney, if I remember correctly. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. So he'll be in the Sydney and the Perth one.
Perth Supernova is June 28, 29. And then there's a whole bunch more in August, September, and go on. We'll do those later. But yeah, we got Adelaide, Melbourne, and Sydney, and Perth over the next month and a half.
Yeah, it's very exciting. He's done Adelaide and Brisbane, or the Adelaide and Gold Coast a couple of years ago. But look, Sydney's the big Phantom weekend for everyone in Australia. It's where the largest number of guests will be. Frew will have a booth this year. There will be a folio set. There will also likely be another book, a collected works from some Frew old comics, which will be released as well. And Frew number 2000th will also coincide with the weekend as well.
Yep. So plenty to see and do. Of course, the dinner, the Leaf Folk Memorial Regardless of School Explorers Club dinner is on that weekend, and the guest is Lauren Marshall.
Yes, good to see that WA will be represented, seeing we crop up the rest of the country.
The rest of the country, you reckon? Yeah. Other guests at the convention, not just at the dinner, but other guests that have been announced at the convention. We've got Lauren, of course, Alex Tripp, I'm assuming that is, Joe Driscoll, and you mentioned Billy Zane, who are all attending the Sydney Supernova convention. So if you can get up to Sydney over 21st, 22nd, go check out the Frew booth, go check out the fandom connections there, and catch up with all the Frew fanatics, the fandom fanatics, not just all Frew, there's everything else going on.
While we won't have an official Chronicle Chamber presence there's lots of other fans that will be able to welcome you. If you're just wanting to come to Supernova, there'll probably be a lunch, there'll probably be catch-ups, the night before and stuff like that. We'll promote all of that type of stuff. If you're interested in attending or anything like that and it's your first time, get in contact with us and we can put you in contact with some other fans that will be attending. So then that way you will not miss out. It is a great weekend. If you are a fan and you can't go to Sydney, but you're interested in going to Perth, or you want to go to Adelaide or some of these other conventions that are in your state, let us know and we can put you in touch with some fans from that area. Also, if you are a fan and you attend any of these events, but also say, for instance, in America or Europe or something like that, and you're attending or you know of a Phantom-related guest attending one of these, let us know so that way we can let other fans know as well. We can only know what we are told, so please let us know.
Thanks, everyone, for listening or watching us, however you access your podcast. Just a reminder, our website is chroniclechamber.com and our email is chroniclechamber@gmail.com. Please don't forget to have a crack at the census. If you have a crack at the census, you have a crack at winning a prize. And the website for that is www.chroniclechamber.com/fan-census or fan-census. Or you just put in Chronicle Chamber fan census into Google or your search machine, and I'm sure it'll come up. It's also on our links on the website. Of course, we always love to hear your thoughts, your feedback, your opinions on our social media platforms or over at the YouTube channel. So please give us a hoy on those. You can subscribe to us via YouTube or through your favorite podcast apps, including iTunes or Spotify.
Yeah, thank you for listening, everyone. Looking forward to reading your comments, your feedback on the stories or anything that we've raised. Please make sure you do that. And for myself, happy fandoming.
Happy fandoming, one and all.
Enemies beware, the Phantom's always there, but you won't find the Phantom.